We're a small group, so everybody always shows up late. Good morning and happy Tuesday, and welcome to the day after Labor Day weekend. I hope everybody had a good weekend.
Yep.
Anybody? Yeah, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, as you know, we hold these calls on the first and third Tuesdays of every month to talk about agent attraction. Laura, can you continue to let people in? Thank you. And today is no exception, even though everybody seems to be running late after the weekend. So I came with a very specific agenda today over something that happened on a recruiting call that I had early last week. But if anybody has anything specific that they would also like to put on the agenda, please be sure to put that in the chat. I'm happy to talk about anything else that anyone would like to bring to the table today. So going into this, I'd like to start with a realization that I had this morning, so that maybe it incentivizes everyone else as well. I was doing the math as I was preparing for my team meeting with our sales team later today on how many weeks are remaining in the year. Does anyone know off the top of their head? And this is an interactive call.
15, 15, 15.
I would say like 16.
Will's close. It's 17.
Oh, okay.
17. 15 if you don't count the week of Thanksgiving and Christmas, which I work all the time, Thanksgiving and Christmas too. So who's taking those weeks off? But 17 weeks left to the year, right? Now, 12 weeks left to Thanksgiving week. Who here has read the 12-week year?
I have.
Nobody else? Nobody else other than me and Katie?
No, I've been wanting to, but hadn't done it.
Oh my gosh. I should make you
Oh.
guys come to my team meeting right after this because I'm talking about it. It's one of my favorite books of all time, guys. Favorite books of all time. Totally changes your way of goal setting.
Yep.
Where you are thinking about it in 12 weeks, because when you do it in 12 months, you are giving yourself permission to wait longer to meet goals, right? You're like, oh, well, I didn't meet them in January. It's okay. I've got 11 months left. Oh, I didn't meet them in January and February. Oh, it's okay. I got 10 months left. When you set your goals and you create them around 12 weeks, a much shorter time frame in order to get to those goals. So if you haven't read it, I highly encourage you to read it. It's actually pretty good on Audible as well. Although there are some very good graphics inside of the book that I would encourage you to look at. One of my favorite things to talk to agents about is the Valley of Despair. Okay, anybody ever get really Katie's like, she knows the Valley of Despair, we're all in it. I talk about it with sales agents all the time, but it's also really important to talk about with regards to agent attraction is when we get very, very big and we're in and we're talking to agents and we're really wrapped up in talking with them or in sales, we get distracted because we're in it with those people. We forget to continue lead generating, right? While we're doing it, we put those things to the back cycle. We're so busy. And then we have this drop where we don't have anything going on. And then we're in the valley of despair. So I do encourage you to read the 12-week year if you have not done it. But it did bring up a lot for me this morning as I was preparing for the sales meeting, because I was like, what to do with the last 17 weeks of the year? What to do? Like at first I was like, holy crap, we're in September. And then at the same time, I was like, 17 weeks is a good bit of time. And if you really thought about it and you said, because realistically, anything you do in that last month, you're not seeing the effects of until the following year anyway. So we really are looking at 12 weeks. We're looking at 12 weeks to finish out this year. What are you going to see? The remainder of this year is going to happen in the next 12 weeks. Okay, so I'm going to start this call with that. Will, you came off of mute. Got something to say?
Yeah, no, this is timely because no, you're right. When I think back to last year, I was getting 2 to 3 calls. I made a video on YouTube and it like literally took off this time last year. And from that video, I got, 2 to 3 appointments a week. And I'm noticing the video starting to take off again. So this is the time when people are starting to look. So I'm gonna just create more content around that for YouTube and try to get some more meetings.
I love that. And remember, guys, that as we get towards the end of the year and people are starting to see where their 1099 might land, wherever they are, That's when they're really starting to think about making changes. Like once that 1099 comes or they get that last notification about what they've made that year, they're like, hmm. So it's a really good time to start thinking about this. So I wanted to start with that. If you haven't read the 12-week year, I highly encourage you to do it because we're about 12 weeks until you're not going to see the impact of what you're doing until the following year, right? So then we're already into 2025. Okay. So today's topic of discussion was, are you using emotional intelligence or your ego when you're doing your agent attraction? Okay. And the reason that this came up for me was last week I was doing a recruiting call, and I'm doing quite a few of them at the moment. And yes, Madeline, Laura, can you look up the link for the 12-week year and post that in chat? Thank you. I was doing a recruiting call, and I currently have an ISA company that's doing those for me. They set them up, and they're like 10-minute conversations in the beginning, right? And it was a very interesting conversation. It was great. It was fantastic. But what he said to me was very telling. He said, we were about 15 minutes in, none of mine last 10 minutes. About 15 minutes in, he said, you know, you're about the 5th EXP agent to call me in the last 6 months. And you are the first person that actually just talked to me and listened to me. We actually had a conversation. He said, everything else was about everything that EXP could do for me and all of this information. And he said, I really enjoyed our conversation. I'll be honest, we didn't really talk about EXP for the first 10 minutes. It was more about, same question I ask at the very beginning of all of these calls. Tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about your business. Tell me about what's important to you. What's going on with your business at the moment? What do you wish was different, right? And we ended up in this whole conversation about the NAR changes, right? Because it just happened and it just morphed into this great and amazing conversation. But what it told me was every other conversation he'd had was about ego, right? And guys, if you have the ability to come on camera, I'd love to see your smiling faces. And so when I started thinking today about what to talk about, and we talk about this a lot at Workman. Those of you that don't know, I'm also a Workman Master Coach. So we train on a lot of different things, but we talk a lot about emotional intelligence. Okay. Does anybody here not know what emotional intelligence is? Right? Anybody? It's okay if you don't. And I'm going to share a couple of things today so we can talk a little bit more about it. Can everybody see the screen that I'm sharing now? Okay, great. So when we start thinking about agent attraction, most of the time, and I don't love it whenever I hear this, but it happens. We hear about people EXPing all over people, right? And that is coming from a place of ego, whether you realize it or not. You think you're calling them to tell them something amazing. You think that you're calling to share this incredible news about how we're going to help them in their business. And in reality, hang on, there we go. In reality, we're vomiting on them. Your ego is that you have the answer to all of their problems by giving them all of this information all at once. That's ego. That's, I have the solution to all of your problems by giving you all of this information about how this is going to fix it. Okay, emotional intelligence is a couple of things. We're going to go over self and we're going to go over others. Self-awareness of who and what you are, right? Self-management. Let me tell you where that comes into play. A lot of agents like to talk. And they're really, Sasha, I saw your face. They like to talk a lot. Okay. They like to talk a lot. And they like to impart that knowledge to everyone else all the time. Okay. Self-management with emotional intelligence means knowing when to talk and when to listen. Okay. When you are thinking about agent attraction and you are thinking about emotional intelligence, I want you to consider for one moment that if you are having your very first conversation with someone, you don't know them and they don't know you, right? Especially if it's a cold situation like what I had last week. So if I am vomiting on him in a 10-minute conversation that he's agreed to give me because someone set that call, what am I telling him? Anybody? Okay, come off mute.
What was the question again, Selena?
If I have a 10-minute call with someone, that's all he's given me, and I use it to just vomit all over him, I'm just talking, what am I telling him?
I don't care about his situation or
You don't value him. You don't value him as a person.
Yep. That
You're,
is ego.
yeah, you're telling them you don't care
Yep.
about him or her.
And so when we start talking about emotional intelligence, it's about social awareness for that person as well. And it's very difficult when you're just on a call and it's not a Zoom, right? This is why whenever I tell you that I want to see your faces, social awareness. I can see if you're paying attention. I saw Sasha's smirk a moment ago whenever I said that agents like to talk. And I was like, she gets it. Like it's social awareness. But when you are on a call, you have very little time to build rapport, whether you're on a call or you're in person and on the phone. You have literally seconds. That's another great book to read, Building Rapport. It's very small if you want to read it. You have seconds to build rapport with someone. Seconds. If you're using those seconds and or those 10 minutes to vomit on them, it's a lack of social awareness. Okay? Be socially aware by asking questions that matter. Figure out, like, I take those moments, like, they think that I'm going to jump on and tell them everything. I do not. I jump on, I'm like, hey, it's Selena with EXP. Thanks so much for taking the time to have a talk with me today. Can you tell me just a little bit more about you and your business? And then usually they just tell me all kinds of things. Guys, in that amount of time, I'm typically hearing what it is that even made them take that call. Okay? It's like, well, I had a good year 2 years ago. Last year wasn't that great. I wish I was doing a little bit more. I worked my sphere pretty well, but then everybody I knew kind of just didn't really they felt like I was too salesy. Or it's like, oh, I go into the office, but there's never any help. Nobody ever helps me. I wish I had more help. Guys, everything that they're telling you, because you asked that question, you didn't just show up and say, hi, my name is Selena with EXP. Let me tell you about our splits and our cap and this and what we can do for you and all of it. Like, that's literally what this man told me had happened. He said, I took your call. He's like, even though I've heard from several other agents with your brokerage, he's like, because I was just curious to see if you had anything different to say. And he said, you haven't even mentioned the cap. And I was like, well, do you care? And he said, not yet. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just keep talking. He's like, I said, are you enjoying the conversation? He goes, I'm loving the conversations. He's like, I haven't had this kind of conversation in a really long time with anybody. And I was like, great, I'm having fun too. Let's keep talking. Right? It was a totally different situation. That's where we get to relationship management. And he said to me, very honestly, at the end of the call, he said, I don't really think I plan on making a change. He's like, but I would really be interested in staying in relationship with you. That's a huge win. Whether you realize it or not, it's a massive win. I spent the first probably 7 minutes of that call not saying a word. Okay. I asked one question and I let him talk. He told me everything I needed to hear in that first 7 minutes. And then we chatted. We had a great, wonderful conversation about what was happening in our industry. We had a great talk. And he said, how often can we talk? I said, how often would you like to talk? Like all of a sudden we're in relationship. Okay. That's emotional intelligence. Stephen, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, like it's really important to build that relationship because I've experienced it to where yeah, they weren't interested in the company, but then 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, I have a referral in your area, right? And then now you're working together. They're seeing how you work. They're catching the vibe more. And eventually, who knows? They might be interested in learning more. But yeah, so even if they don't join the company, you're still building relationships, which is a big part of real estate.
Thank you for that. If you go into every conversation with the idea that it's the short game, you're playing the game wrong. Okay? Sometimes it's the long game. And that's okay. Like, how amazing that after he'd had all of those other conversations about EXP, that this time he was like, can we keep chatting? I was like, I had a lot of fun. It's not often I get to have those kind of conversations. It was a deep conversation. He'd been in real estate for 18 years. And like, we just chatted about all kinds of stuff. And I was like, I've been in real estate for 28 years. And he was like, really? And he's like, and you're still with it? I was like, I haven't quit yet. Still in it. Still going at it. Katie, go ahead.
I just had two thoughts go through my head. One is I do a lot of coaching with loan officers, and I think everybody on this call has been approached by a loan officer who vomits on them. Let me tell you about this new program and this new rate and this new blah blah technology tool or whatever, and you're like, that's not what I need. And it's frustrating because you're like, well, you seem like a nice person, but it's frustrating because they're just vomiting whatever their new tool or program is and wanting to get in their business with you, but not ever asking you. So I think we've all been on the receiving end of it. And so that's how I coach loan officers is don't do that. But the other thing is a script that I use that I just has been very successful, particularly for people that I know that I've met over the years, is I use a script like, hey, I'd love to be in business with you. And I don't know what that looks like. And we haven't chatted in a while, but I just want to catch up and see what's going on with you and your business and see if there's an opportunity for us to work together in some way, shape, or form. And that opens the door to a lot of interesting conversations that may have nothing to do with moving real estate companies, but I get an opportunity to learn about their business and what they're working on. And it's sometimes an EXP comes up, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a lot of these calls are people I haven't talked to in a really long time, and how they answer the phone is funny. But it's just like, hey, I'd love to, you're on my list as somebody I want to be in business with, and I don't even know what that looks like until I can learn a little bit about what's working for you. So, I mean, I can work with a cold call too, I guess, too, if you recognize somebody in the marketplace.
Yep.
So, anyway, just a script to share.
Thank you for that. So the next thing I kind of wanted to share was, we talk that way people understand emotional intelligence. And guys, there's a lot of books on this right now, and there's a lot of articles on it as well. But the thing I want to focus mostly on is this social awareness and relationship management. Listening and empathy is incredibly important. Most people are listening to respond. You need to be listening to just take that in. Okay. Now, if you aren't taking notes on these folks at the same time, like my notebook is always like right here, and then it goes into my CRM later, but I am listening because they are telling me why. There's a reason they take the call. There's always a reason they take the call. Okay. I had someone on Friday, he was like, I agreed to take this call. I just want you to know I have no intention of ever moving. I'm very happy where I am. And I was like, but you took the call, so I know down deep in there somewhere. And by the end of the call, I figured out what it was. Guess what? Like, guys, he was adamant at the very beginning. I'm never switching. I love where I am. Nothing could make me move. And by the time we got done with the call, I learned he is the top producer where he is. He feels like he has no one around him that could possibly help him grow. There's no one for him to nobody to mentor him, no one to provide him anything for him to look up to. It was like, he was like, I've been here for 3 years. It feels very stagnant. I'm always the top producer. I was like, now I know why you took the call. Right? Now I know why you took the call. But I had to let him talk. And I listened. I just listened. I didn't say, don't you worry, we've got you. We've got all of this stuff. Let me throw all of this stuff at you. Let me tell you all about everything about what we have and what we do. I said, I understand. I understand. What would that look like for you? What would you feel would help you in that way? Is it, a top producing team? Are you thinking about starting a team? We went through that. And guys, what it turned into was me sending him how to work with his top 50 and his sphere of influence better. That was our next step. I did not throw up on the man. I did not vomit. It was one simple thing. And by the way, I very, very personally know the team leader that he is under at his current brokerage. And I was like, okay, I'm going to tread very carefully. I'm going to tread very carefully right now. But instead, I just came from a place of giving. And I was like, I really heard what you said. And I have something I think that might help you. Would it be okay if I just sent you something? And he was like, well, that would be amazing. And he's like, you're not going to like throw the whole like gamut of stuff at me. I was like, oh, you were very clear with me. You're not interested in moving. You're happy where you are. You know, like, and I sent it to him and he sent me the nicest thank you back, right? This was so helpful. That's what he said. He was like, I love this. I'm going to get started on it right away. And I sent him one right back. Keep me posted on how it's going. I'll check in with you every now and then, see how that's working out for you. That was it. Guys, it's a long game. But now we're in relationship. Now we're in relationship. Okay? The biggest mistake people make is thinking it's always a short game. It's a short game. If I don't get you, I'm going to move on. You've got to be categorizing these people based on what they're telling you. Is it an A lead, which is right now, a B lead or a C lead, just like we do in real estate? Are they now? Are they 60 to 90 days out? Are they over 90 days out? And now you've got your pipeline. Okay. You're looking at it and you're saying, okay, here's where we are. Here's these people that I'm kind of in relationship with. I've heard what they've said. I've made my notes so that each time I call and check in, I'm sort of speaking to what their pain point is, right? Without being overly assertive. Okay, there's assertiveness, and then there's just actually coming from a place of care and listening to what they're telling you. Okay, I'm not one of those people that's going to beat you over the head and be like, this is the only place for you. This is not the time for that. Okay, people have a lot of options right now. We want them to come to us. You want to attract them to you because of who you are. Okay, not because of like the ego of, let me tell you everything about what we have and what we do. You want them to come to you because they're like, you know, she wasn't like this awful, horrible person throwing things up on me. They're attracted to the fact that you came from a place of giving. I'm reading a new book right now, if you haven't read it. The Go-Giver Leader. I read a lot in case you hadn't noticed. Like the Go-Giver Leader. I'm all about givers and takers for anybody who's ever done PSI. When you call and you're asking them to come on your time, you're taking. That's your time. That's ego. It's about their time and when they're ready. So I want you to think about that as you're having these conversations. Katie, I'm sorry, you still have your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, sorry. I was moving my screen around and I think I hit it by mistake. So my mistake. Just go. You can take it down.
Yep. No worries. So just another quick page is about being very aware of your emotional intelligence, right? Are you being too assertive or are you just being assertive, right? Are you being too pushy? Are you being enthusiastic and warm? Okay. So everybody here familiar with the DISC assessment? Yeah. D-I-S-C. I am a high D. Occasionally, I can be accused of being slightly too assertive. Katie's face. Scotch. However, I am also warm. Katie can attest to this as well. I am warm. I am a hugger, even though I'm a huge introvert. It is important to be persuasive for some folks, but it is also very important for you to be self-aware about what's important to them. Okay. That rapport and you starting to feel like, do they pull back on the call? Do they pull back on Zoom? Watching them and seeing how they respond when you're overly assertive or when you're trying too hard is going to tell you something. Okay, you have to watch. This is emotional intelligence as well. If you are pushing too hard, and yes, Leo, I saw that the other day. You can now do DISC assessments through EXP. It's so awesome. I love it. If you haven't done one, you should. But it's really important to just be aware. Be aware of how you are behaving. Be aware of how they are behaving. Katie, go ahead.
I just asked Leo or you, Selena. I didn't know. I saw the disc assessment on EXP, but can we do that for anybody? Like I could do it for my son, or is it you have to? Is it a limited number of disc profiles you can use it for? Or I saw it and I was like, I'm curious.
I have not looked to see if you can disc other people. If you
Yeah.
get,
I haven't tested it, but that's
Yeah.
a great question. I'm curious now.
I'll find out.
Okay, ask your elves, Selena.
Yes,
Ask your
I'll
elves.
ask
We
the
can
elves.
use because it'd be great to use it for agent attraction, and if you're hiring for a team or
Absolutely.
things like that. So I don't know how if we have a limit of you get 2 a month
many.
or how many we could get, because that would be super helpful.
That would. So I used to teach our sales team about DISC because we would do matching and mirroring. It's equally important in recruiting. Matching and mirroring. Okay. And then Leah's making fun of me. He's mirroring me right now. I actually had an actor on my team in New York, and he would do it to me all the time in team meetings. I would be doing something, and he would be doing it, and it would take me a little while to see that he was doing it. I was like, darn it. It was really, really good. Matching and mirroring is just as important in recruiting as it is in the sales, if you're doing a listing appointment, because they're going to start responding to you if you are matching and mirroring their same behavior. Okay. If they are, like I said, if they're pulling back, kind of pull back as well. Take the cues, guys. Take the cues. Okay. If you're being overly assertive and you see them pull back, then take the cue. Okay. This is about them. It's not about you. If you think it's about you, then your ego is doing the attracting. Okay. I want you to take a step back in that moment and realize that if that's where you're coming from when you are trying to attract people, you're doing it the wrong way. When you switch to doing it the other way, they're going to naturally come to you. You're going to be in relationship with so many people that it's going to just start to flow in because they're like, I just like talking with them. Like we have the best conversations. And start inviting them to be in a mastermind, because you know why they would be willing to do that? Because you haven't been EXPing or vomiting on them. You have been talking to them about industry related things. And like the guy that I had to talk with, it was so incredible. And I was like, I'd really like to put him on a panel. Stephen, go ahead.
I really love this because all these skills are like you said, just you can use them in your day to day, right? So I know some people on here, they probably don't reach out, right, and call agents and things like that, but you're going to come across agents at open houses, at events, things like that. And this just kind of helps you to, kind of just build the relationship more than be like a recruiter, right? So.
Yep. That's literally what we do for a living, guys. It's relationship building. Whether it's a buyer or a seller or an agent. That's what we do for a living. We're in relationship with people all the time. And when you come at it from that perspective, that you're like, let me find a way to connect. Let me find a way to connect, whether it's my tone, whether it's what I'm saying, whether it's the fact that I listened and I heard what they had to say. And guys, it's very important that if you're hearing what they have to say, that you say, what I heard you say was, okay, because now they feel heard. What I heard you say was that it's really important for you to be given the opportunity to have someone to mentor you because you're the top producer in your current brokerage, and you have been, and you don't feel like you have something to attain or for someone to look up to, right? That you're not surrounded. You are the smartest person in the room. And now you want to be surrounded by other people who are the smartest people in the room. So now you are learning and growing. That's what I heard him saying, right? And he was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I was like, okay, interesting, right? And put it in your notes, okay? Because that's important. We have a lot going on in our lives. Sometimes we don't remember. Always a note, okay? So hang on, let me just go one more. Why is it not flipping my page? I have another page in here. There we go. Motivators. This is something I started doing last week, okay? Because I have a CRM for whoever I'm talking to. People are motivated by money, recognition, or impact. Casey talks about it all the time. It's typically what we see: money, recognition, or impact. So I started making in my notes by the time I got done with the call, which one was it when I got done? And I'm putting it in my notes: money, recognition, or impact, right? Some people come on the call and they're like, I just need to make more money. You know, I'm not doing enough. I don't have enough training. I don't have enough lead flow, whatever that is, right? That's money. They are motivated by money right now. That's what they need. So I'll put that in capital letters. They need money. Okay. So our conversations right at that point, and it can change for people. Might not stay the same their whole lives, right? But let's say it's a new agent. They've left their old job. They're coming into this and they're desperate. They just need help, right? Maybe they're paying a big company dollar wherever they are and they're like, I just need money. Okay. It's very important to keep having those conversations about what's important to them and how we can help them grow. Okay. So money, recognition. I want to be recognized as being top producer. I want to be recognized as closing the most transactions. I want to be recognized as a rookie of the year, right? People will tell you what's important to them if you listen. Recognition is very important to a lot of people. Impact. I really want to make an impact in my community. I want to be known as the person who, sold this many houses and then donated this much to charity. Okay, these are all examples of how you might hear this in a conversation. When you speak to them back, you want to speak to what their motivator is. If you're talking to somebody who could care less about recognition, then you don't really, they might not even care about icon. They really might not. I've definitely talked to people that are like, meh. However, if you talk to them about the fact that they get the stock back because money is their motivator, they're like, oh, never mind. Hello. Totally different conversation, right? They're like, they don't care about the recognition of being an icon agent. They care about getting the stock back that they paid in for company dollar. Does that make sense? So you have to speak the language, but you have to listen in order to get there. Okay. Most people don't listen. All right. Everybody's very quiet. Anybody have anything they want to share? I've been talking at you. I'm going to listen. Sasha, anything? Nope. She's like, nope. You're just listening. Mo, how about your group? I see your whole group back there. Hello, everybody.
No, we're paying attention. We love disc. Everybody here was disc test before they joined the team.
Good.
Every assistant that we had gets disc test. And if anybody wants to sit with me or Maria gets a disc test, just so you know.
Excellent. Good.
Can you go over disc test just for if anyone doesn't know exactly what that is?
Absolutely. Okay, so DISC is, I don't like it when people call it a personality assessment because it's not. It is how you behave, typically how you're seen to behave and how you behave. And so D, I, S, and C. D is usually stands for dominant, driver. And I'm gonna give you some examples as I'm saying it so that everybody here who has not done it understands it. Usually that's someone who is very direct and bullet points, and maybe they talk with a little bit of assertiveness, kind of like I'm talking right now, and they might do a lot of this when they're doing it. Okay, so they like to get things done, and they're just like that. Okay, that is a D. I. Okay, so most agents have I. I have like a -12 I, just in case you're wondering. So that is usually someone who is the life of the party. They are usually very outgoing. Okay, it is a someone who is very comfortable in social settings. It's very so like I'm drained by having to use my eye. They are absolutely like it fills them up. It makes them feel very, very like they're the influencer of that particular like plus 12, Stephen. Like that is an influencer. Okay, so it's usually someone who is just very outgoing and out there, right? So that's an I. S is steadiness, stability. And when you think about something like that, they're often the person who is keeping things, thank you, Laura, keeping things very even keeled in a situation. right? And they like things to be even killed in their lives, in a deal, in a relationship, whatever that is. They're keeping things very steady. That's very important to them. And then C stands for conscientiousness. I also like to use the word correctness. You might see that person as being very analytical. Okay. They're very detail oriented. They like all of the details and everything that's in there. So most people have 2 over the line. What that means is over 50. Okay. It can vary. Some people, I have 3 over the line. Some people have like one's like 99I, or 99D. Katie, she's off the call now, but she was on here before. So, what this does is just shows how we typically sort of behave or how we're seen and how we interact with people. And the reason that we typically disc people in work environments, thank you, Mo, and I'm a huge proponent. And by the way, I don't ever hire and fire to disc because it can be different. I use it whenever I'm recruiting and talking to someone that I'm hiring, one, to validate it. We talk about it. We talk about what the report says. And 2, just to make sure that sometimes you can have too many people on one team with the same DISC assessment. And I'll give you an example. In New York, when I started working with the team that I was working with there for many, many years, they had plateaued on where they were as far as the number of homes that they had sold. I think it was about 60, 65, and they'd stayed there for a very long time. And when I came in, I was just curious about why they were never getting past that point. And when I reviewed everyone's disc, quite literally everyone on the team was an SC. And what we call people who have a high SC is analysis paralysis, especially when it's really high. So we had an entire team, agents and staff and team leader, all SCs. Everything had to be perfect before anything could move forward. Okay, when you have an entire team of that, nothing gets done. Nothing moves forward. So it was very interesting to see that. And then in comes Selina, who has a D. And I was like, I do have a high C. I'm like, we're going to build the airplane like 80%, and then we're going to take off and we'll just build the wings on the way down. It'll be fine. Everything will be great. So it worked, and we eventually got to 150 homes sold every year. So you have to kind of blend things, but it also helps whenever there are conflicts. Right? You're able to see and sit down and discuss how best to interact with other people on your team or in your lives. Very curious to see spouses both get dissed. If you haven't done it, lots of fun when you both sit down with your report, see how that's played out after 20 years of marriage. So there's a lot to be said there. The reason that I bring it up is because when you train on it, and I'm trained to teach DISC and to give DISC and all of this, you can sit across from someone and determine their DISC almost instantly. And then you can alter your behavior to better build rapport with that person. Okay. So I will sit across from someone and realize instantly that they are not a high D, and they do not want directness, and they do not want someone who's bullet pointing them. They might want all of the details. And so I will stop, slow down, lower my voice, and give them all of the information that they need in a very calm manner. They're going to ask 9,000 questions, and I am prepared with all of the answers. So I will alter all of that. Some people could care less about all of those details, and they really want 3 bullet points on why they should make the change. They don't want to talk about it. They might want you to send them an email later. They're like, just tell me what this is going to do for me. That is a high D. A high I is going to say, are there fun people? Are we going to have community? Are we going to talk all the time? Is it going to be great? Are we going to have parties? That's what that's going to look like. And you're going to say, yes, we're loads of fun, and we have lots of Zoom calls, and we have parties, and we get together. And that's what that's going to look like. So you have to be prepared for every one of those people. Okay? Every one of those people, because it's different. It's just like a buyer and a seller. You have to just be prepared to have that conversation and match and mirror based on what you see across from you or what you heard on the phone. Everyone is different. And that S, that stability, this is them. I don't know. I've been with the same brokerage for 20 years. I don't like change. Okay. I don't like change. I'm very nervous about change. I'm very scared. I don't know how it's going to go. Like it's going to be a lot of stress. Okay. And you are going to tell them about how we're going to make sure it goes beautifully for them. And we understand that change is very hard. Okay. Each one of those things is about emotional intelligence. Mo, I see your hand. I think it's your hand.
Yeah. And you know what? The biggest lessons came from identifying your own personality behaviors, because if you think about it, you get to know yourself, you get to know what you can surround yourself with, number one, and the people that you can attract to your organization, but also your business, right? Sellers and everything. But also, again, like you say, relationships. I had to do it for my relationship, identify how she functions, how I function, right? But also for team lead or for team or for leader roles, right? You can share this with your actual organization and be like, hey guys, this is where I come from. This is how I interact, just so you guys know. And anytime you say anything, all of us, because your team knows you and gets to know you, they understand that you're coming from a good place, from your personality, so they get to know you too. So
I love that, Mo. It's really a communication style more than anything else. When we rebuilt the team years ago in New York, and I taught about it, it's very interesting because I asked everybody to guess what I was, and everyone assumed I was a high I. I stand in front of a team, I lead a team, I talk in public, I'm a coach, and I was like, everyone thought I was a high I, right? And I was like, my eyes like to speak. It's like a to speak. It's like this small. But you can be any of the things to accommodate, right? It might drain you a little bit. But what we did was, as I taught it, and as everyone got their reports for the next, like, gosh, some people left them up forever. We gave everyone little paper nameplates like you would have whenever you're sitting at an event that has your name and maybe your title on it. And it had their name and it had their disc profile on it. And it sat at everybody's desk so that everyone on the team, after they had learned what D, I, S, and C meant and what those communication styles were like, that as they walked up to talk to another agent on the team, they were like, oh, they're an SC. So I'm going to adjust the way I'm speaking to them now because I've learned how they best like to communicate. Right. And they would be like, oh, this is the high D. So they're not going to want to hear me drone on and on and on about this story. They just want the bullet points of this story. So I'm going to adjust how I communicate with this person as a result of that. And it helped them build better ways to communicate with each other as a result, because they'd learned what the communication styles were. By the way, the report also tells you how not to communicate with someone. That's that DISC assessment. And then that allowed them, as they saw those little name placards and what the DISC assessment was, to adjust their behavior. As a result of that, we had better relationships in the office, right? So imagine if you did that with every single person that you were trying to attract in. I'm not asking you to change who you are at your core. I'm asking you to change just the conversation, that it's not about you. It becomes about them. And you're opening up the opportunity to build a relationship with someone because you're not overpowering yourself in the conversation. You've now opened it up to have this relationship, because sometimes D's and I's can be a little much. Go ahead, Mo. Oh, I thought I saw your hand. Did I see your hand, Mo? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. So there's work to be done here. It's training, and it's taking the opportunity. I often tell people to work on it with the people in your regular orbit, right? If you get an opportunity to sit across from your spouse or your loved ones and start watching how they communicate and start adjusting yourself, don't practice with recruits. Okay, practice with the people in your life first and start recognizing that you're making the changes. And then give yourself that opportunity that when you are sitting across from someone in a recruiting appointment, that now you're like, oh, they're asking an awful lot of questions. I bet they're a high C, or I bet that for them, money is important, right? So start thinking about motivators, about how they're behaving. And if they pull back, there's a lot that goes into this, guys. This is not just you're going to cold call somebody and they're going to sign up the next day. Okay. I had like 40 conversations last month. Like so far, I've got like 2 people that are possibly signing on. It's the long game. But you got to be in it. And that's why at the very beginning of this call, I talked about that 12-week year. I looked at it this morning and I was like, setting myself goals. I was like, I had that many conversations and that many people. And I was like, people can I get in based on the number of conversations that I had? And setting myself sort of this idea behind taking the relationships I've been building. How do I build them one step further? And then I have 12 weeks until Thanksgiving to see the impact from that, right? But you have to build the pipeline the whole time. If you don't, you're in the valley of despair. Okay? It's relationship building every step of the way. If you're doing it from your ego, you're doing it wrong. You're never going to take your call again. Emotional intelligence takes work. It's not an overnight thing. It's listening, learning, giving, not taking, and understanding that it's their timeline, not yours.
Hey,
Will?
I have a question, Selena.
Yeah.
At what point does it go from following up to trying to convince somebody to join? When you look back, there's people that you've been talking to for, 3 years, right? At what point do you say, you know what? I'm trying to convince this person and I'm not in the business of convincing. And I just move on.
Why would you move on, Will, if you're already in a great relationship with them?
Correct. But at what point is it I'm convincing them? I will move on from asking them to join EXP.
Oh, so ask them what it would take. What is it that holds them back? I had that maybe it was about a month ago. There was somebody on that asked me to do a third-party validation, and I was like his 7th call, by the way, 7th third-party validation. And I was like, I just stopped and I was like, how many more of these will it take? How many more of these do you need? He seemed ready. He really did seem ready. But it was just like one more call, one more call, one more call, one more call, one more call. And I was like, I'm just curious. I'm just gonna, like, because I'm a high D. Hello, I'm direct. And I was like, I'm just curious, how many more of these calls do you feel like you need to make a decision one way or the other? And he just kind of sat there. And I was like, well, it's my understanding I'm like your 7th one. You've asked all the questions. You feel very confident with the answers. He'd even spoken to his wife and she was like, time to make the change. And I was like, and I realized it. I knew what was going on. He was a very high S. Did not
Selena,
like change.
I have a question, Selena. If we ever have someone that's interested in the company, are you available to
Oh, yeah.
to
Oh,
okay.
yeah. I'm in the third-party validation. Laura, can you post that link from our website? I'm in the third-party validation site for us as well. So you can always book directly on my calendar. Yep, anytime. I do them all the time. Thank you for asking, Stephen. Yeah. So when I heard that, when I saw and realized it was that he was a high S, I said, what would make you feel more comfortable with making the change? And he's like, I'm just nervous about, he'd been with the same brokerage for a long time. He said, I'm very nervous about how it's going to happen. Like, is it gonna halt my business? What's gonna happen there? I said, okay. So if I was to provide you with like a detailed breakdown about what that transition would look like, what maybe we could do beforehand so that you felt comfortable with making the transition, would that do it? He was like, yeah. I was like, okay. like he just needed one step further. It's about listening, guys, and asking the right questions sometimes, right? Somebody goes through 7 calls. He was like, totally, he seemed ready, right? And like, he was like perfectly happy with every question and everything. And his wife was already on board, but he was just not willing to pull the trigger. Okay. You have to, like, this is work, guys. This is research. I highly encourage you to learn about DISC. I highly encourage you to learn about emotional intelligence. People do not become great attractors by just picking up the phone and throwing up on people. It's work. It's research. It's about learning. I'm in a constant, like, if you saw how many books are behind me, I'm typically reading 4 or 5 at one time. It's a scary place to be. But it's like, you have to, like, constantly be learning about all of these different things so that you're in a place to be able to recognize when someone sitting across from you is struggling just a little bit, and maybe they don't even know yet what they need or want. And that's okay too. But you might be able to help them, or someone on this call might be able to help them, or someone in leadership, right? There's a lot of opportunity there. So it's about listening. Okay, I know I spoke a lot. Anything else anybody wants to follow up on?
I'll just add, Selena, everything that you said is phenomenal. I took a lot of those nuggets that I wrote down. I think that once you're attached in the conversation, that's where the ego kicks in, right? So that's a good way to notice if you are, really making it about the other person or it's ego based. Once you're attached to an outcome, then that's the egos having the
Ego.
teeth around the conversation. So I love everything you're saying, and I just want to highlight the note taking, guys. It's phenomenal because you're able to put your thoughts on paper, their thoughts on paper, like what they're saying, and with the structure that you build on the notes, you can actually see how you can add a ton of value to the person, right? You could really figure out like, oh wow, this is really interesting for them. This is really interesting for them. I'm going to talk about revenues. I'm going to talk about this subject. So it's a don't underestimate the power of note taking. It's one of my superpowers for sure. I always take notes of every single day and every single call. So thank
I
you
love
for this, Selena.
You bet. Thank you, Leo, for adding that. And guys, if you aren't using a CRM, and like sometimes it can really get to be like a lot. I'm also coached, and my coach was like, whoa, where are all these people? And like I was able to show him like and where they are, A's, B's, C's, and then it shows the progression, right? And at the end of it, the idea is that you're going in and putting in those notes. And before I call them the next time, I'm reading the notes. What did we talk about the last time? What was important to them? And now I'm adding that money recognition impact because I feel like that's very important for me to just like kind of like put in the back of my head whenever I'm getting on the phone. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is what's most important to them in this moment. So make sure that you're utilizing something to track these folks because hopefully you're going to use these next 12 weeks to be very impactful about attraction, right? Going into the end of the year and realizing that people are going to start making decisions once they start receiving their 1099s or they get to that point. This is an incredible time to start having conversations at a very high level. But I love what Leo said. The second that you realize that you are tied to the outcome, that you are focused on that, your ego has come back into play. Okay. It's not about you. It's about them. And it's not on your timeline. It's on their timeline. Sometimes they do need a little nudge, like the guy where I was the 7th call. But it made me realize that he just needed one more thing from us, one more thing to make him feel secure and stable about making a change. And we can do that. We had it. We just didn't know that that was what he needed yet, right? So sometimes it's about listening a little bit more carefully as we move forward in those kinds of conversations and saying, oh, I can make him feel a little bit more secure. And then he was ready to make the move. Okay. So I hope everybody took something good away from today. Do your research, learn a little bit more about emotional intelligence, pay very close attention when people are listening, and body language is critical. Okay. Leo and well, Katie's off now. I will find out about the disc thing. I've been seeing it there as well, but I've taken my disc so long ago. I know what mine
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, it's on the My EXP app, and I'll figure out if you could do it for other people outside as well. A really good book on emotional intelligence, by the way. There's so many, but one of my favorites, it's Letting Go by David Hawkins. Letting Go by David Hawkins. It's one of the most powerful books I found on emotional intelligence. So just wanted to add that as well.
Love that. All right, guys. Well, these videos are recorded and we house them on our resources page at empirebuilders.pro. So if anybody ever wants to go back and watch it again, feel free to go do that. I thank everybody for participating today. I appreciate seeing all of your smiling faces. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.